Millions of Americans are about to face life-changing updates to critical government programs. And most people still don't know what's coming. The SNAP program, better known as food stamps, and Medicaid have both been overhauled in a new law that is already in effect but hasn't yet touched your benefits. Confused? You're not alone. Today I'll break down exactly what these changes mean, who will be affected, and how to protect your benefits. We'll also clear up some confusion about Social Security, because there's a lot of fear and misinformation out there right now. Welcome back to Social Security. Post your home for updates on Social Security, SSI, SSDI, Medicaid, and SNAP. Please hit the like button if you find this helpful, and subscribe to stay informed about every update that impacts your benefits. If you have a question about any of the topics in this video, whether it's about work requirements, dependents, or future changes, drop it in the comments and I'll do my best to reply. A major legislative overhaul was signed into law on July 4th, fundamentally changing how both SNAP and Medicaid function. Although the law is active, it hasn't yet been implemented across the country. Why? Because these federal programs are administered by the states, and each state has been given time to prepare. This has created a strange situation where the law has changed, but the experience of most recipients hasn't. Yet, these changes aren't minor tweaks. They redefine eligibility rules and redefine what counts as a dependent. Work requirements, age brackets, and exemption criteria have all shifted. That's why, even if things feel normal today, beneficiaries need to prepare for these changes now. If you rely on SNAP or Medicaid, it's critical to understand how these rules will impact you by the final deadline of January 1, 2027. It's important to understand the time gap between when a law is passed and when it actually affects your daily life. Although this legislation is legally in force, it grants states a transition window that runs through the end of 2026. That means full enforcement won't start until January 1, 2027, giving states roughly a year and a half to change their systems, update their rules, and notify beneficiaries. This delay is why there's so much confusion right now. People have heard rumors or watched early coverage about SNAP and Medicaid being cut off, but haven't seen their own benefits change. That's because the states are still ramping up their systems. But make no mistake, this is not a drill. The law is already real, and when states finish implementing the changes, millions of Americans could see disruptions in their benefits unless they meet the new criteria. One of the most significant changes is the expanded work requirement for SNAP. If you're between the ages of 18 and 64, you will soon be required to meet a minimum of 20 hours per week or 80 hours per month of work or approved activity. This doesn't just mean a job, it includes things like job training, educational programs, community service, or volunteering. Any of these can be used to meet your eligibility standard. This may sound like a standard employment requirement, but for many people, especially those juggling childcare, unstable work, or transportation issues, it's a major barrier. The government's position is that able-bodied adults without dependents should contribute through work-like activities to continue receiving benefits. However, critics warn that this may unfairly impact people who are on the edge of poverty but don't have access to flexible or consistent work opportunity. Fortunately, there are clear exemptions to the work requirement. If you are under 18 or over 65, you're automatically exempt from these rules. Pregnant women are also exempt, as are individuals with a documented physical or mental disability. These exemptions are critical because they ensure that vulnerable populations aren't penalized for being unable to work. This rule specifically targets ABAWDs, able-bodied adults without dependents. If you're in that category, the government assumes you're physically able to fulfill the 20-hour per week standard. However, if you fall under any of the exemption categories, you'll need to ensure your documentation is accurate and updated with your local SNAP office before the rule goes into effect in your state. The law didn't just change work requirements, it also redefined who counts as a dependent. Previously, any child under 18 was considered a dependent for SNAP. Now, only children 13 and under meet that definition. That's a drastic change, and it could make many parents suddenly ineligible for exemptions they've relied on for years. What does this mean in practice? If you're a parent of a 14-year-old, you'll now be expected to meet work requirements even if your child still lives at home and requires full-time care. That's a big shift, and one that could put additional strain on single-parent households or families caring for teens with special needs. These new definitions could create confusion and hardship for families who haven't realized their exemption status is about to change. If you fall under the new work requirement category and fail to meet it, the consequences are severe. The federal government will only allow you to receive SNAP for 3 months in any 3-year period unless you're in compliance. That's right, just 3 months of benefits over a 36-month period. This isn't just a temporary suspension. It could mean total loss of benefits for years. The purpose is to push able-bodied adults into the workforce, but for those in unstable housing or low-opportunity regions, this could result in lost access to food assistance during a time of need. For people living paycheck to paycheck, missing just a few weeks of SNAP could lead to food insecurity or worse. Medicaid recipients aren't spared in this overhaul. Starting soon, anyone between 19 and 64 years old must meet the same standard, 20 hours a week or 80 hours a month to retain eligibility. As with SNAP, qualifying activities include not just employment, but volunteering, job training, or schooling. This requirement is expected to hit hard. Medicaid serves over 72 million people, and this rule affects a huge portion of that group. Just like with SNAP, pregnant women and individuals with disabilities are exempt. But everyone else needs to show proof of participation in a qualifying activity. For many, this means juggling medical needs, employment barriers, and new administrative hurdles just to stay covered. There are key exemptions that will protect some Medicaid recipients. Pregnant women, people with disabilities, and those caring for dependents under the age of 14 are not subject to the new work requirement. However, like SNAP, these exemptions apply only if proper documentation is on file and must be consistently maintained. It's important that Medicaid recipients understand the urgency of this. If you're exempt, you should not assume the system will know your status. You'll need to work with your state Medicaid office to prove it. Failing to provide timely documentation could result in loss of coverage, even if you're technically exempt under the law. The new Medicaid rules mirror SNAP's definition of a dependent, anyone 13 and under. This alignment means a parent of a 14-year-old or older child will no longer be considered to have a qualifying dependent, even if the child lives at home and is fully reliant on them. This change is especially troubling for low-income families where teenagers still require intensive support. It strips parents of exemptions they previously qualified for, meaning more of them will now need to work or volunteer 20 hours a week, often while still caring for children who need them. The redefinition tightens the net and leaves many families vulnerable. According to the most recent projections, up to 16 million people could lose their Medicaid coverage due to non-compliance with the new work requirements. That's a staggering reduction from 72 million down to approximately 56 million recipients nationwide. This isn't just a bureaucratic adjustment, it's a seismic shift in access to healthcare. Losing Medicaid means losing access to primary care, prescriptions, mental health services, and emergency coverage. And, in a vacuum, for low-income individuals with chronic illnesses or disabilities, this could have life or death consequences. And the burden will fall hardest on those with the fewest resources to adapt. While the law is already signed, full implementation won't happen until January 1, 2027. That gives states time to build infrastructure, notify recipients, and enforce the changes. However, don't be fooled by the delay. States may begin rolling these out gradually even before the deadline. This means recipients must prepare now. If you're between 18 and 64 for SNAP or 19 and 64 for Medicaid, it's time to review your work or volunteer status. Check your dependent classifications, make sure your exemption paperwork is accurate and up to date. Waiting until 2027 to act could cost you your benefits. One of the biggest problems with these changes is the confusion they create. Because SNAP and Medicaid are federally funded but state administered, each state is implementing the changes at a different pace. This creates a patchwork system where some people may see new requirements right away while others don't. The result is fear, Rumors and misinformation. Some think the programs are already cut off. Others believe nothing will happen. The truth lies in the middle. The rules have changed. The clock is ticking. And whether you're affected depends on your age, employment, exemptions, and what your state decides to do. Staying informed is the best protection. And let's be clear, Social Security has not been touched in this legislation. That includes retirement, SSDI, SSI, and survivor benefits. These programs are legally separate and cannot be altered through the type of bill that enacted the SNAP and Medicaid changes. The law in question was passed using a process called budget reconciliation. This special legislative tool allows Congress to bypass the Senate filibuster and pass certain fiscal policies with just 51 votes. But it has strict limitations, and one of them is that Social Security is off limits. If you're receiving Social Security, your benefits are not affected by this law. Reconciliation laws are powerful, but narrowly focused. They're typically used to pass budget legislation without needing 60 votes in the Senate. While this makes it easier to push through controversial changes, it also restricts what can be included. Social Security is considered outside the scope of reconciliation bills and cannot be changed this way. That means any rumors you've heard about this law cutting Social Security are simply not true. While SNAP and Medicaid will undergo major transformations, your Social Security benefits remain legally protected for now. It's a small relief amid the sweeping reforms happening elsewhere in the system. We covered a lot today, from work requirements to dependent changes to eligibility cuts, and these changes are going to affect millions of households across the country. If you're on SNAP or Medicaid, now is the time to prepare. Don't wait for a notice in the mail. Review your age, your dependents, your exemption status, and your current work or volunteer situation so you're ready when these changes take effect. If you found this breakdown helpful, please take a second to hit the like button and subscribe to Social Security Post. That's how you'll stay informed about the laws that affect your family, your benefits, and your future. Got questions about Social Security, SSI, SDI, Medicaid, or SNAP? Drop them in the comments. I'll be replying personally to as many as I can. Thanks for watching, and take care.